It's my duty and delight to introduce you all this evening to this launch of issue 16 of the Alchemy Spoon. And what a pleasure it's turned out to be co-editing this and putting it together. We had more submissions for this issue than for any other theme that we've run so far, which I suppose just goes to show that we all love our food, or maybe just love writing about food. Uh, and the food poems came in various guises. There was lots of food with family, food with friends, food with lovers. There were a lot of those, actually. Um, Food as memory, often being taken back to childhood, food in foreign places, and a fair old number of them were humorous, which was an additional joy. And maybe not so surprising given that food is associated with sociability, conviviality, generally having a good time. I have to confess to having been seduced by poems about kippers. Who knew this would be a thing? I don't know. And my somewhat bemused co-editors indulged me in that peccadillo and allowed me to put two poems by Kippers into this issue. So you'll see them included here. Um, the sharp-eyed amongst you may have noticed an oddity on page 8. The printers unaccountably substituted a letter F instead of the requested decorative symbol, and we debated whether to send the whole print run back or not, but decided to not do that for the sake of an F. And anyway, at least F stands for food, amongst other things, of course. And as I was thinking about what to say this evening, and this is a personal aside, really, thinking about food, I just felt it was impossible not to mention, given current circumstances, food being used as a weapon of war. And although there are no poems that are directly referencing that, it just felt as if that needed, the shocking circumstances of that was something that I wanted to acknowledge. Um, I'd also like to remind you, those of you who've had a hard copy will have seen, hopefully, the flyer for the new Nine Arches Primers series, with submissions for which are open at the moment, but they close on September the 9th. So this is a mentoring program for poets who have yet to publish a full collection. And the mentor this year is Laurie Bolger. And so if you want more details of that, the flyer or visit the Nine Arches website. And so to the poets and their poems. Where Roger, Mary and I are going to introduce the poets reading tonight in groups of 2, sometimes 3 maybe. And Dylan Jacks, who was one of the judges of the Catherine Bevis Memorial Poetry Competition, is going to introduce the winners as they read their entries. And as most of you will probably know, Catherine Bevis was an extremely talented poet who very sadly died too early last year. And we at the Alchemy Spoon are proud to be associated with this competition in her honour. So first up, I'm going to introduce James Norcliffe and Kathy Pimlott. Now, James is our featured poet for this issue, and although unfortunately he's not going to be able to be here live tonight, we're going to show a video of him reading one of his poems. So if I just tell you a little bit about James. James is a New Zealand poet who's published 11 collections of poetry, including Dark Days at the Oxygen Cafe, Deadpan, and a letter to Oumuamua. I practiced that and still got it wrong. In 2022, he was awarded the New Zealand Prime Minister's Award for Literary Achievement in Poetry. And secondly, Kathy Pimlott. Kathy Pimlott's collection, The Small Manoeuvres, was published by Verve Poetry Press in 2022. She's got 3 pamphlets with the Emma Press, Elastic Glue, and Goose Fair Night, and most recently, After the Rights and Sandwiches. And she's going to be reading her poem, Le Spirit d'Escalier. So, first of all, Roger, you're going to play James reading his poem, I hope?
Merg Carai for his guests. He desperately needs a little spice into his life. So into the black and white marble mortar he sprinkles cumin, coriander, fenugreek, and fennel seeds. Expertly he rolls the heavy pestle with an easy pressure around the seeds until they are a heavily scented grit, which he transfers to the waiting bowl. There have been too many tears in his life, but nevertheless he fries the diced red chilies in spitting oil, blinking at the eye-stinging vapor before adding onion and green pepper. His hopes of flying now are as forlorn as those of the chicken now diced, floured, and dropped into the cumin and garlic oil to be turned, to sizzle, soften, and brown. The air is changed. The ceiling reels with the charge of it. The lights sway in the redolence. The monsoon season cannot be far away. The change of it catches his breath. His guests wait at table, unaware of this slide as something large and striped pads towards them, tail swinging like a new beginning.
Thank you. And now, Kathy, if you would, please.
This is L'Esprit d'Escalier, which I'm sure most of you will know is that phenomenon where you only think of a suitable retort when you're actually on the way downstairs, leaving the place. L'Esprit d'Escalier. Back when an adventurous host might serve a moussaka, my friend said if I was food, I'd be tin spaghetti hoops on toast. Believing myself tricky, boudoir biscuit, gentleman's relish, or capers, an acquired continental taste. I was miffed, more precisely, piqued. Hours later, the words come. In your small heart, Sherry, you know I am, and always was, bullous to your damson, quetch to your plum.
Thank you, Kathy. Lovely. And so now we're going to move on to hear from Rebecca Gethlin and Julia Webb. Rebecca's written 6 poetry publications, and her poems also appear in a variety of magazines and anthologies. She was a Hawthornden Fellow and a poetry school tutor. Snowlines was published by Maytree Press in February 2024. And Julia Webb, who isn't able to be here this evening, well, she's at another foreign hotel that doesn't have Wi-Fi, so she had hoped to read. I'll read her poem in her stead. Julia is a neurodivergent writer from a working class background who lives in Norwich. She has 4 poetry collections with 9 Arches Press, Bird Sisters, Threat, The Telling, and Grey Time. She is a poetry editor for Lighthouse. So, Rebecca, if you would read your lovely poem, please.
So Rebecca's just emailed to say that she can't make the link work and she's given up. And would we read it? So I'll read it for her.
Oh, okay.
So this is an English girl's dinner with her Italian family. I'm neither an English girl and I speak no Italian, so apologies in advance. I'm eaten up with shut indoorness. It's gnawing at my guts. More and more food appears, but I'm stuffed like a veal calf, all stomach, fidget, gag, set down on an alien planet. I can't digest a word they say. They gesticulate and shout at one another, so I'm all a-startled. I'm sitting next to Dad, and he's flicking shouts back and forth across the table. Do they hate each other? On the windowsills sit blood-red geraniums, and beyond the pane the sky is mouth-wateringly blue. The beach will be butter yellow, my eyes are aching with want, and every time I frown, the man beside me pinches my cheek between his second and third finger, and hot tears spurt. Carina Piccolina, he says, hanging on and shaking my face. A woman points at me and laughs. Che bella tua figlia. Pink and green ice cream with a wafer fan arrives in front of me. After a while, cigarette smoke smarts my eyes. Thunder of talk slows, quietens, chairs shift, and soon, maybe never, I'll be released from this chamber of calamity. But now coffee cups steam, bright liqueurs gleam in little glasses. The other children start to kick one another on the table, but not me.
Thank you. And I will read Julia's poem, which is I started eating to try and fill the gap. I started eating to try and fill the gaps, to find a little sweetness when everything had turned sour, to replace my family, to gain control, because being homeless makes you feel so empty. I started eating to forget. Mum's slimming club, Dad's barbed comments about her weight. A man I once loved who drunk told me he would have married me, but you got a bit chunky. All those voices. My sister who moved into my room 2 days after I left. Those sofas I surfed on. My parents, you've made your bed, etc. I started eating to feel something to fill the gaps. And now I'm going to hand over to Mary, who's going to introduce her poets.
Thank you so much, Diana. And thank you to James, Cassie, and in absentia, Rebecca and Julia. Those are really moving, beautiful poems. It's a shame we could have got, actually, Roger, you did a fine rendition of Rebecca's poem, but Dylan, who is here, they are Italian, so they could have done it. They could have read the Italian stuff. Anyway, I'm going to be introducing 4 poets in groups of 2. I'm going to start with Susan Kambalu, who is a poet educator originally from Scotland who belongs to the Oxford Poetry Library community. And she's going to read her wonderful poem, Cutlery, which appears on page 22 of the issue. And she will be followed by Jan Feroz, who lives by the sea in Essex. Her work has appeared in magazines such as Butcher's Dog, Under the Radar, Magma, Poetry Wales, Atrium, and the Interpreter's House. Last year, she won the Poetry Business International Book and Pamphlet Competition. And Jen will read her poem, Today's Internet Rabbit Hole, which is on page 17 of the magazine. Over to you, Susan, and then Jen.
Thank you very much. And it's wonderful to be here this evening. And there's 2 words I want to explain briefly. They're in Chichewa, a different language. And they are nsima, which is a staple food found in southern and East Africa, and ndiwo, which is a sort of stew or relish that is eaten with nsima. And it could be meat or vegetables. Cutlery, after Mary Jean Chan. The same fingers that mold nsima into a hot ball sink into your muscles. Same thumb that indents that white orb into an edible spoon to mop up the ndiwo, presses into your shoulder, strokes your jaw. Food tastes differently when we scoop it with our fingers to our mouths. You taste differently when I ladle you, sweet you to my mouth. The oily velvet tomato and goat stew is like the velvet of your well-oiled skin, no ashy elbows. You taste of Vaseline and Sema and hot tea.
That was amazing, Susan. And very happy to be in a pair with you. Um, we met in person at a festival in Oxford last year. Was it last year? And so it's lovely to reconnect here in a different way. Okay. I just very, very quickly before I read my poem, just want to shout out some of the lovely illustrations and pictures that are in the hard copy. My poem happens to be facing this photograph by Linda K. Allison, and it's called Plethora of Croissants. And I feel like the word plethora should now only be allowed to be used when talking about pastries of some kind. So yes, very pleased to see that. Anyway, my poem is called Today's Internet Rabbit Hole. Today's internet rabbit hole is the fig after a decadent stuffed croissant at the new cafe. It is again motherhood that finds me, and the female hornbill, walling herself up inside the trunk of an ancient tree. Her mate bringing figs, leaving them at the hollow like offerings to a god he doesn't understand. Did you know figs are inverted flowers blooming quietly, in secret? She eats this sweetness. Soon there are wet feathers, small beaks tapping against the edges of the tree. She has no hunger for the world. She is blooming internally, figful, fruiting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jen and Susan. That was wonderful. And interesting you should mention about meeting friends through festivals and readings, etc. Because I met Jen at a poetry reading in Ware in July, where I also had the pleasure of meeting our next poet, Esther Lay. So Esther is a 2023 Forward Prize nominee. In 2024, she won the East Riding Festival of Words competition and the Right by the Sea competition. She has work published in Thimble Lit magazine and Wax Lemon and forthcoming in Rust and Moth. Esther will read her poem Street Cart Chicken, which appears on page 26, and she'll be followed by Yoda Olinik, who writes that she loves to make people comfortable, but that's too bad as she's a poet. Her work has appeared in Rattle and The Shore. She's published a memoir about restaurant life and is working on a second anthology. Yoda's poem is on page 15 and is called Durian. So over to you, Esther, then Yoda.
Thank you so much, Mary. It's lovely to be here. Before I read this, a huge shout out to the actual author of the recipe. Smitten Kitchen is the blog, and Deb Perlman is the food writer who came up with this recipe. And I can guarantee it's like a home run every time. So do try it out yourself. Street cart chicken. The author of the recipe says it's sacrilege to make it at home, but includes it anyway. It was our last good meal, him and me, before we finally broke. I make it for you now, and with the heat off the stove, the rising, spattering oil, I snap at my small son for trying to hug me, and the babysitter whisks him away. The frying and clattering obscures your hello from the hall, and suddenly there you are, filling the kitchen with smiles, your suit still holding the winter air. And you take me in your arms, and the coolness of your cheek tips the scale back, and my failures become light, inconsequential, like motes of dust.
I think I'm up next. Hello, bonjour, everybody. You might hear I have Canadian accent over here. I'm coming at you from a few hours away from Toronto, all the way over in Canada. So very happy to be here today and to be invited into this collection. This is my poem Durian, and it's dedicated to my brother Jason. The sweetness of our bond summoned me here to Chiang Mai. A nomad for 10 years, you were finally home. You were in love, not with a girl, but with a city. The red-hot streets brimming with locals, crowded bowls, all color and spice, crispy midnight chicken, fatty pork belly, fresh lime and peanuts on everything, the chilies, the pork broth, the noodles, the noodles. I came for you, my tour guide, my brother, but I stayed for the food. We devoured weeks together. You taught me the proper way to slurp cow soy, how to dress for temple, bargain with bot, sawadika, always noodle soup for breakfast. Indulged me with jackfruit, snake fruit, mango, dared me with duck beak, grasshopper, ant egg soup. There is nothing I would not do to see you smile. I'd flown across the world just to see you. Signs at the airport said, no guns, no explosives, no drugs, and no durian. A fruit so funky and foul one slice could smother an entire marketplace, its stench lingering in the air for days. And now there is nothing but a durian between us. The spiny sliver jiggles out of a bag, slippery with sweat and slime sap. Durian smog slaps my nostrils with rotten onion, sewage, skunk, vomit, pig shit. As you chew the noxious jelly, you reveal a secret. There is a 5% chance I won't experience this fruit as vile, but as perfect vanilla flan with toasted honeyed almonds, rich, floral, silk, magic. My belly's apprehension rattles louder than the motorbikes as you break a chunk free. I raise the stink fruit to my lips. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yoda. And that was wonderful because I tasted durian in the Philippines once, and you've described it so brilliantly. So thank you to Yoda, to Esther, to Susan and Jen. That's absolutely lovely poems. And I'm now going to hand over to Jill and Jax, who will say a few words about the prize-winning poets in the Catherine Bevis inaugural poetry competition, which was held earlier this year to commemorate our very dear friend Catherine. You can read the winning poems on page 60 to 64 of this issue. So now it's over to you, Dylan.
Thank you, Mary. And thank you to Roger and Diana at the Alchemy Spoon for supporting with us, working with us and publishing our winners. It's really wonderful to be able to see the work in print, and I'm really looking forward to hearing the poets read their winning poems tonight. Before I hand over, I want to just briefly mention the prize, which I organised together with my writing group, which Catherine was also a part of, supported by the Alchemy Spoon, and also Ewan, who has taken over the writing school online. We were really chuffed with the response, considering that we had quite a short submission window, and with it being the first competition also. And we were really pleased to have been able to donate £600 to 2 charities that supported Catherine. We fully intend to continue with the prize, and we'd like to build on it year on year. Next year, we hope to launch it a bit earlier and also have a longer submission window. And we really hope that you will all consider supporting us again. One of the most beautiful aspects for me was getting to read the submission emails, where people often mentioned how they knew Catherine or her poetry, and how they had been impacted by Catherine's work and the loss they felt when she died. Catherine was a dear friend of mine and one of my early and enthusiastic cheerleaders, so it feels really important for me to keep Catherine's memory and her poetry alive. So now I'm going to introduce the winning poets. Congratulations to you all again, and thank you for sharing your work with us. We're going to start with the first prize winner, which is Sarah Doyle, and her poem is On Finding a Cow's Jawbone in My City Garden.
Thank you so much to Dylan and all of the judges. This really does mean the world to me. I held Catherine in great regard, so it feels like a particularly meaningful prize. So I'm really grateful. Thank you. Our hosts this evening have said that I can screen share. I'm going to send a screen share request to Roger, just because my poem is slightly quirky on the page. And I'm hoping that that might be possible. It is possible. Thank you so much, Roger. On finding a cow's jawbone in my city garden. The bone was stripped, and the teeth bared, and what should have been tongue was void, was the hollow of air, and what would have moved and chewed was still. Yet the thing, hear me, spoke. Where hide and hair once held gristle and muscle and song of animal, and the lick of a mother had caressed the animal's cheek to the point of baptism, lay milky pale and, hear me, naked. Where a throat lowed to the herd for the sake of bellow, a call all muzzle and more, spittle warm, now cleansed of cud, of saliva, till only the clack of mandible stays to speak, hear me, its tale. Where, on abattoir floors, velveteen bodies bleed sticky sweet, the song they sing is this. Hear me, in the ecstasy of meat, nothing tastes sharper than the cleaver's kiss. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Such a brilliant, brilliant poem. The second prize was awarded to Helen Kay, and the poem is June Break on the Caledonian Sleeper.
Okay. June Break on the Caledonian Sleeper, in memory of my brother. I would be calm if death were like this, a steady thrumming past stations into a night dented with hills, my body in its soft bunk shell. In the slow slide from all I know, I would be half thrilled by the clank of coaches uncoupling, while doors clap shut like prayers. In the voids between named places, where dusk gropes towards dawn and hours empty out time, you arrive. Away from our town, I wander through your life, that bright, oily fairground, set to be folded and driven away. Headlights splitting sky from road. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Helen. Such a beautiful poem. The third prize was awarded to Catherine Redford with the poem Her Worldly Goods.
Thank you. Thank you very much to the judges for selecting this. And I'd like to read this poem tonight in memory of my late wife, Rebecca, who would have turned 40 this week. Her Worldly Goods. I keep her umbrella, swimsuit, pool pass in her wallet's neat archive of cards and receipts. I cannot keep everything. It's the thought of other people owning her belongings that gets to me. 9 black plastic sacks of all she was, stacked like rubbish in an alley on a Monday morning. As the charity van pulls off the drive, I cry. I have kept all the wrong things. Should not have given away the faded t-shirt she wore on 100 unexceptional occasions. I have no clear memory of her in it, which is entirely the point. Life is at its happiest when you don't think about living it. When I marry again, I wear her wedding pearls threaded through my hair as if I am a mermaid freshly emerged, unsteady on strange new legs. In one version of the tale, I will always walk on knives, my feet bleeding every night as I sit on the shore with my back towards the land. In others, I merely never forget the way the water held me. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. That sort of took my breath away hearing those. The last poem will be read by Rachel Jeffcoat, and it was the winner in the over 40s category, which after discussion with Catherine's husband, Ollie, was something that Catherine felt really strongly about. So under the new mandate, Rachel Jeffcoat.
Thank you. Yeah, that was really meaningful to me to win that prize, and thank you for letting me sneak in. I was only 40 in March, so I just got in under the line. This is under the new mandate. Under the new mandate, everyone must wear their hearts on their sleeves, strapped tight, wine-coloured tubes snaking under the shirt. For too long, say the lawmakers, humanity has hidden its true face beneath the ribs. A brand new age of clear communication. Remarkable, at first, to see our little drums beat differently for lying, lust, indifference, contentment. How they take on bruise purple, both for panic and domination. Boiled lobster for melancholy. A delicate rose for the awe of a new moon. The fogies all miss eye contact, reminisce about the old days when a raised eyebrow meant something, when there was such a thing as a mixed signal. But Grandma, we laugh, why look through his phone when we can see the vermilion on his arm? Heart readers proliferate in the gutter press. Why Meghan's carmine reveals her secret resentment. The sick watch their hearts marble over with gristle. Women shine torches on the arms of strange men in the park, and 4chan abusers joke about getting off on her terrified double beat. By the time cardiolinguists discover that guilt and trauma have almost identical stress patterns, hundreds are already in jail. Our streets are safer without these discordants, the Prime Minister says, his left arm behind the lectern. The cadence of transparency is all. The police take that up as their slogan. Add it to the Miranda rights. Greet you with it at your door. Still, at least we're all emotionally healthy now, we shrug, signing on. Afterwards, they said that during the first executions, the exposed hearts of the stadium-sized crowds thumped so loudly it could have been applause. Thank you.
Such a brilliant original poem, thank you. And thank you to all of our winners, and again to the Alchemy Spoon for accommodating us. And back to Roger.
Thanks, Dylan, and what an excellent evening. This is introduce 3 poets. Tim Waller, unfortunately, is not well and at the last minute couldn't attend. So I'll talk a bit about Tim, and then I'm going to read his poem, and then I'll introduce the next 2 poets, Carolyn Druitt and Dave Wakely. So Tim Waller's a kindergarten teacher who studies poetry in London and writes about his southwest and midwestern roots, and has been published in a lot of magazines, Troubadour and many others. I am not a Midwest American, so I apologise in advance for reading this in a North Staffordshire voice. At Billy Wright's Chapel of Eternal Rest, Aunt Lucy buttons the cuff on her black suit, runs a comb through her curly white hair, dabs a dot of chantilly to a thin wrist before she fogs her bifocals with her breath, wipes them with the back of a black sleeve, sitting straight in a chair among a scent of lilies, her black pumps barely touching the floor. She whispers to her daughter, Irma Ann. She needs to sit a spell before she can pay her respects, before patting a neighbour's hand, offering a prayer. Mama, replies Irma Ann, you can't come every day. Sometimes you don't even know the deceased. Aunt Lucy shakes her head, makes a tsking sound. There'll always be a first or second cousin I know. She jots down a recipe for a chocolate cherry cake, shuffles to view the body on Irma Ann's arm, declares, I wonder if Junior don't look alive. Sugar, that man loved my fried chicken. She nods. You know, I met the Colonel at the State Fair, told him my recipe. He insisted I call him Harland. Look at all the money that man has made. Please, Mama, chides Irma Ann. You're at a funeral, and you've never met the Colonel. That's a big old lie. A balding man reminds them to sign the guest book. The organist plays Amazing Grace for a third time. As the preacher adjusts his bow tie, opens his Bible. You think, Aunt Lucy asks, we can go out for supper? I got a hankering for a leg, some wings, extra crispy. Which I'm sure will be much better in Tim's voice. So next we got Caroline Druitt, who's a writer and facilitator, running workshops across London in unlikely places. And her poems have been published in many places, Lucent Dreaming and the North, and she's been commissioned by Apples and Snakes. Was shortlisted for the Bridport Prize, the Aesthetica Creative Writing Award, and commended in the National Poetry Competition. Our final poet will be Dave Wakely, who's worked as a musician, university administrator, poetry librarian, and editor, online programme manager for Milton Keynes Literary Fest, and lives in Buckinghamshire with his husband. So over to you, Caroline.
Thank you so much. So happy to be on this incredible lineup. So this is Painted Ladies. Whenever my grandfather visited, my mother would serve butterflies. Monarch, red admiral, swallowtail, meadow brown. The painted ladies were his favourites, had the best flavour, he said. She'd make dipping sauces for each variety. I'd watch him dunk the tips of each wing with care before bringing them toward his swollen lips. The crunch of the thorax, their delicate colours staining his fingers. A drip of lemon and oil dribbling down his pock-marked chin. It was usually a Sunday and we'd be dressed to the nines, my mother straightening out the pleats of my skirt when he turned his head. His reproval would hatch anew and slowly eclipse any light left flickering in the dining room. At his wake, she served a platter of moths. We masticated their furry bodies in silence, dabbed at the darkness, catching at our mouths.
Over to you, Dave.
Hello, everybody. This has been an absolute feast and a banquet, and it's a real honour to be reading here tonight. This is called Comfort Food. There should be a recipe, how to make a perfect day at home. Start, ideally, with a sleepy morning hug, dressed generously with duck down and laundered cotton. Pour in the first coffee of the day, but resist any temptation to stir. Lie back and listen for the blue-tipped sotto voce murmuration above the garden feeder, the flamenco tap of the woodpecker endlessly headbutting the pergola's rotting uprights. You might need a raising agent, a partner's lazy smile, perhaps, if they have one in store, or a warm shower while somebody voluntarily assembles breakfast one floor below. Attend to base essentials, daily medications, elementary maintenance, devoutly secular prayers. Keep nail clippers in a handy drawer, painkillers safely separate from too much gin. Encase all digital devices in cushions to ward off the inexorable risk of arterial stress. Substitute favourite ballads for the morning news. Spike the mixture with temporary delights. The temperate touch of bread not long from the oven. A radio's serendipitous choice of song. Postcards from friends you didn't even know were travelling. Omit anything too acid or sour. Diligently pare away any rind of disagreement. Be mindful of the minor courses. The 4 p.m. ritual of Assam tea and cake. The daily diet of TV quizzes to keep memory's edges honed. Serve a warming early dinner with a meze of side dishes. Recollections of today's small triumphs and daydreams of tomorrow's. Wear fleece-lined slippers for the final rounds. Check gases off, all exterior doors locked. Draw heavy curtains tightly against what remains, for now at least, outside.
Thanks very much, Dave. And shall we just unmute and give some whoops and cheers and poetic finger clips or clicks or whatever you want to do to thank all our readers. Excellent. So we've sadly come to the end of the launch of 16. I've got a few things to do. I want to thank all our readers this evening. It's been a brilliant evening. To thank all the people who've submitted to us and all the poets who we've published in this issue, and also to the artists and photographers who've given us their artwork without charging us for it in return for a free copy of the magazine, which I think is very generous of them. We've got some brilliant artwork, and we're getting people submitting now in advance once they know what the theme is, which is most gratifying. Also want to thank the member of the audience who just took out a year's subscription to the Alchemy Spoon. Thank you very much. You know who you are, and it's always pleasant to have people taking out a year's subscription. Our next issue is due out in October, so Diana and Mary and I have a month's rest before we start off all over again, and so the window will open on the 1st of October, and the theme for issue 17 is music, which sounds as though it should be an interesting set of submissions, I would think. And it closes on the last day of October. So once again, thanks very much for everybody who's come. Thanks for all the readers, subscribers, to Mary and Diana for all the support they give to all of the poets and the hard work that they do for the magazine. And have a safe journey home if you're not at home, or enjoy a glass of wine in Pompeii or wherever else you might.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Fantastic evening.
Yeah,
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been great.
Thank you.
it was a real joy to hear all these poems. It's amazing how different it is when you hear them read by the poets. I mean, it's always great to read it on the page as well, but you know.
It was brilliant. I was really looking forward to that, and yeah, it was so lovely to hear them.
Dylan, you were great. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it was fabulous.